We are going to talk about this question. The real question I want to talk about, the real question I wish I could talk about, the question I, as a pastor, like to wrestle with is the wrong question all the time. And that simply is, who is God? But the reality that I think is true for every single one of us today is that who is God is not near as important as the question is of who is your God. Let me say that again. Practically in your life and in mine, even as a professional Christian, who is God? The theological, simple, plain Jane question about who is God that we can raise our hands and give the Sunday school answer to is not near as important, not near as practical, in fact, it's not near as life-changing as a question of, that's not it, but who is your God? So for the next few weeks, I want to wrestle with the reality, something for you, actually for the next 5 weeks, I lied, I'm sorry. I want to go about the end of April, and really just emphasize this idea that how who God is actually intersects our lives. Because after last week, since almost all of us, most of us, we went to Florida together, and we really just delved deep into it. And some of you really began to wrestle and discover, we just both wrestle and discover the nature of who God is for you, and began to ask some serious questions. And I hope for some of you, I know specifically, make some serious decisions about who your God is. At who God is for you. But I want to really spend a few weeks just wrestling with that question. But not about who God is, about who your God is. Because as the next slide did say, and I'll say it again, it says the real problem is the real God is not your God every day. But the problem with Christianity that frustrates a lot of people, and the thing that actually frustrates you, is that the God you know doesn't exist in your life every single day. That the God that you actually believe in, we'll get to that in a second, is not the real God. The real God you know, the real Sunday school answer, the answer you're supposed to give if I ask you who the real God is, the answer that I preach on every single day is not the God I live with every day. Let me clarify that. The God I preach to you, I wish I was perfect. But my real God sometimes, the God that actually is real in my life, and I'll explain what I mean by that in just a second, so hold on with me. For those of you giving me a weird face, I'm glad. Keep that weird face for a second. It's a good thing, but you're real God. God, the real God, is oftentimes not your God every day. I mean, think about the questions that Jesus asked the disciples specifically. He asked them two questions, and he asked them, who do the people say that I am? And who do you say that I am? And if you remember, I emphasized that the response that the people gave about Jesus was actually pretty flattering. And this is what they had to say. They replied, some say that John the Baptist was beheaded. And everybody knew it. I mean, John the Baptist's head was put on a platter. So to be a guy whose head was cut off and served to an entire assembly of people, I know, gruesome, right? Who wants to take a chick now? Okay, yeah, that's what they got served that night, and people applauded. It was a huge party over it. Okay, not in the church, but like at Herod's house, it was a huge party. I mean, to be that guy again, pretty big deal. Okay, compliment. To be Elijah, one of the few who maybe didn't ever die, that'd be pretty freaking sick. Or to be one of the others, Jeremiah, or even a prophet. I mean, they gave credit to Jesus. The murmuring around the crowd is that this guy over here, as they process, so who is that Jesus? I mean, you've heard this. The crowd spread. And the stories of Jesus spread. People came to Jesus because they heard about Jesus. People were going home and gathering their sick friends and their neighbors, and they were bringing them wine because they were telling stories of Jesus. And the collective story of Jesus was pretty flattering. You're somebody freaking special. I mean, this is nothing any of us will ever get. This is extremely flattering. There wasn't a person in Jesus' audience that day that wouldn't take one of these. You're kind of like. I mean, for me, it's, and Stacy anymore, jokingly, I mean, it's like you look like a student. That never happens to me anymore, but someone asked her today, old lady, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm death mark here, but asked her what grade she was in, okay? I don't know right there, but the reality, I have no idea how old this person really was. I'm just kidding. She was old. Okay, so here, I'm just kidding. Sorry, Chris, sorry, 50 old. But the point is, this is a really high compliment. And every single one of us know in the room that the people who are following, listen to this, it's so powerful. These are people following Jesus. These are the people who are there next Sunday, at Palm Sunday, at the triumphant entry. These are the people who are bringing their friends and their neighbors to be anointed by Jesus. This is high up company. This is who people thought they were. And every single one of us want to laugh at this maybe and say, this is not really that high honor because we know who Jesus is. And so Jesus says, who's the crowd? A little disappointed. He says, hold on. If the crowd who is bringing people don't actually know who I am, listen, this is amazing. The people who don't know who Jesus actually is are the ones bringing people to Jesus. And so he says, what about you? What about you who have given authority? What about you who've actually done healing? What about you who you say? And look at this is so powerful. Jesus, Jesus asked them, who do, read the bottom yellow word with me. Who do
You.
Who is, this is what Jesus asked me, who is your God? Not who is God. You see, the previous question, the first question was, who do they say the Son of Man is? Who do they think God is? Now I'm going to ask you, who do you think I am? This is such a powerful switch in the tone of Jesus' question. While he's asking and caring about the general audience, what does the world say about me? What do your friends say about me? What does the rest of the church say about me? Now Jesus looks at them very quickly and says, I don't want to know your biblical answer. I don't want to know your Sunday school answer. I don't want to know your educated answer. I want to know your real answer. Who do you say I am? And so Peter says this, and I want you to know real quick that this is a lie. Peter does not believe this. This is what I want to prove to you, why this is so important that we answer the question about who is not God, but who is your God. Because Peter's answer sounds amazing. You are. I know who you are. You are God. I mean, if you want to really submit this whole verse into a statement, he's like, you're God. You're the Son of the living God. You're the Messiah. You're the one we've been looking for. I know everything about you. I memorized, in the first century, they would have memorized the first 5 books of the Bible. And if you guys know, those are the books of the Bible we don't get through when we read them. Okay, they memorized those. They're talking about spiritual. All right, they got through those. They actually got through those, and they memorized them. We can't read it. And he goes, I know who you are. You are God. Again, this sounds like an absolute amazing answer, and Jesus just freaks out. It sounds like Jesus is so excited, and he responds and says, Blessed are you. Now you're not in. Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. For this was not revealed to you by yourself, but God showed you this. So, blessed are you. I mean, you are special above others because you know who I am. So much that I tell you this. You are Peter. Next slide, please. You are Peter. And don't miss this line. And on this rock, I will build my church. On this, what God has given you, what you say about me, upon your testimony that not you have discovered, but that God has given you through his revelation, I will build my church. Simply, the power and the blessing over your answer about who God is will build my church. And I love this next part. And the gates of Hades mean there's nothing the devil can do. We're so honest, right? Just nothing the devil can even do can overcome it. That's so powerful about this. Listen to what Jesus is saying. Your answer, Peter, is everything. I mean, let me ask you this question. These 2 questions that Jesus just had. Who is God and who is your God? Who is God? What? Okay, I'm so confused. Sorry. Who is God and who is your God? Because here's the truth. Say it. Here's the truth. It's so bad when I tell you, don't get ahead. Tell me, speed up. Okay. Here's the truth, friends. These questions don't have the same answers. They didn't for Peter. Because in the very next few verses, Jesus begins to tell Peter and all the other disciples, I'm so glad you know who I am. Good, now I can tell you I'm going to die. And this is what Peter says to Jesus. Peter took Jesus aside. He pulls him away from everybody and begins to rebuke Jesus. I don't know why you have never had the thought or the nerve to tell Jesus, hey, I'm lost. No. Look at his words. Never, Peter said to Jesus, never shall this happen to you. This shall never happen. You will not die. This will not happen to you. And think of that. Jesus, who looks at Peter and says, upon your rock I will build my church. Blessed are you amongst everyone else. And this is what Jesus says to Peter just moments later. This is all in one day. Jesus turned and he said to Peter, there's so much excitement. Get behind me, Satan. Doesn't it sound like a rock to me? Does it sound like someone who's blessed? He said, get behind me, Satan, for you are, I don't know who you are. You are not a rock, but a stumbling block. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. What I want you to catch tonight simply here is this. Peter, the one who is praised for recognizing who Jesus is and receives this amazing promise from God, everything is going to fall upon this. You are now the rock, which simply means the foundation, simply, of how I'm going to build my church. What God is giving you in your testimony, and he calls him Satan and tells him, well, this lasts long. Get behind me. Here's what's amazing. who he said God was did less. I mean, last week, probably, some of you walked away, I hope you did, this is what I prayed for, that you walk away with a different idea about who God is. That God is your wholeness, that God is your gift, that God is your purpose, that God is your plan, that God is your answer. Right? I said it today, even in church, I emphasized, I tried so hard, like, how do I illustrate 4 days worth in 5 minutes? I don't do anything in 5 minutes. I already was kept. But how do I illustrate 4 days of lessons in 5 minutes? Let's see, last year was 5 minutes. Okay, how do you, don't carry your cup that isn't yours? I mean, we would all learn to always say that Jesus is your answer, Jesus is your solution. Jesus provides literally in that space, there's so much freedom when we realize you don't have to do anything, Jesus has done it for you. That all of Jesus is with you all the stinking time. And Peter goes, I know who you are. You are the Son of God. You're the one I've been looking for. You're the one I've followed. I have left everything. Peter's emphasized this, to follow you. Right after this story, in a few weeks, he's going to declare, I'll go to jail and I'll die for you. Peter meant it. He put out a sword and he cut a man's ear off. Don't miss the fact that Peter actually meant that. He said it. And he put his actions behind that. But here, immediately, in the moment of having put his faith into practice, the moment he walks away from a comfortable conversation with Jesus and has to go do something, the Peter we see, not that Peter's, say this again, I'm not saying it wrong. Moments following this intimate moment with Jesus, where Peter has to put into practice the person he said he was, but what he does is not who he says he was. Simply stating, is his God in his mind was not his God in his actions. In other words, let me put it this way. Your real God is not the one you say is God, but the one you practically believe. Okay, let me say it this way. The God that has the potential, the 100% potential, so the God who will absolutely change your life, is not the one that you simply in front of people say, oh, I know who he is. He is God. Jesus is the Savior. Jesus is my wholeness. You can list everything we talked about last week, and that's not the God that's going to save you. It's the God that actually infuses your real life. I mean, look what Jesus said to Peter, who said, I know who the real God is. He said, get behind me, Satan. Get behind me, Satan. For you are a stumbling block, and you have in mind not my concerns, but merely human concerns. So here's my question for you tonight. Here's my question for you. Go ahead, you got this. Here's my question. Is God your God? Is the God that you know, the God you discovered last week, the God that you've been growing in, the God that I hope for the last, time we got back Friday, the last 9 days that you've been, I hope, processing, and at least even in 30 seconds a day, just wondering and dealing with. Is that God actually not just God, but is he yours? Now let me say this. Over here are all your beliefs about Jesus. These are all of your answers about who God is. This is Peter's answer. Peter gave 2 sentences. We know Peter. Peter was like me. He never shuts up. So he had a long list of answers. Okay, don't laugh about that. Okay, this is all of his answers. Everything. You're the Messiah. You are faithful. You are my comfort. You are, as I've said last week in Florida, you're my peace. You're my answer. You're my freedom. You're my assurance. This is who God is. And right here is everything that Peter does. This is everything you and I do right here. Here are our beliefs. Okay? And here are our lives. Let me say real quickly here. This can't do anything here unless we merge the two. But let me say it this way in opposite terms. The greatest tension and stress that we talked about in Florida, especially in my guys' room, about the frustration of Christianity, is when we find the greatest disparity between what we say we believe and what we actually do. The farther your God is from your life, the more frustrated you are. If the God you say you believe in isn't your actual everyday God, no wonder you're frustrated. No wonder you're discouraged. No wonder you're actually potentially, we're not talking about in a few weeks, filled with doubt. Because the God you believe in hasn't entered your life, because that real God isn't your God. The real God becomes your God, when Jesus says, literally as he says in his own brother's words in James, if you believe. I mean, let me ask you it this way. Are you living today as if God is who he says he is? Are you living today? Have you lived today? Have you lived in the last 9 days and everything we learned about last week, right? It's all that we learned, all the things we discovered. Have you lived in the last 9 days as if all of that was true? Let me ask it in a little less condescending way. I don't mean to condescend. Are you living as if anything over here is true? For those of you who are like me and like to control things, or if you like me, like to be right. Okay, Stacey says you gotta be right. Okay. The areas you discovered Jesus was right, are you living as if he is? Because Peter, who was promised to be the rock of the church, was an absolute idiot and got called Satan in a stumbling block. Why? Because the things he said God wasn't his real God. Because your real God every day is the one you practically believe, the one you actually trust. And so for the next 4 weeks following this, we're going to look at 4 theological truths about simply who is God. And my whole goal is to do this, is to help you live, to help you live today as if God is who he says. Here's my whole goal. When we talk about God is all powerful, we call that omnibenevolent. How do you live knowing God's all powerful today? That's the goal. How do we live knowing that God is omniscient? Okay, fancy theological word means he's all knowing. How do you live today knowing that God has a plan for you and already knows how to implement it? That's the last one. Actually, Pastor Kelly will be speaking on that. In 3 weeks actually, Terry is going to be speaking for us. And he's going to be speaking on one of these. And the real goal is just to help you actually merge what you actually know about Jesus into your everyday life. Because I said this to you guys before in my testimony. The only thing that held me together in my dad's experience is that God merged himself in my everyday life. My whole experience has actually been who Jesus. So again, my question for you, going back one slide for you, my real question is this: are you living today as if God is who he says he is? Because those who do, Jesus said, are the blessed. Those who aren't, he says, are stumbling blocks. And stumbling blocks do what to people?
Cause them to rock and roll.
No. I think you said it. What does stumbling blocks do? It makes them fall.
Yeah.
It trips you up. It makes them knock over.
I was trying to say what you said, it just didn't come out right.
No, it's good. I was trying to think about what you said and say it the right way. I'm sorry. Say it your way. It makes them fall. I just want to use my word. It makes them fall. Sorry, Morgan. So we have like 10 minutes, and I still want you to go, because there's a couple of good questions I want you to ask. But I want you to discover tonight just simply, I'm not telling you who God is. I'm just asking, is the God you already know your God? That's my question. The God you already know. I'm not telling you anything new about God. You know a lot of things about God. But is that God? Because if he's not, come talk. I want to talk with you. I want to pray with you. This is where I live, is helping you discover that who God intersects with your life.